speaking of Trump, Kellyanne Conway, infamous for her role as the liar for the Trump administration.
I actually forgot she existed. She's been out of the limelight for quite some time.
I mean, she went through a divorce, had some issues. Yes.
There were a ton of Trump characters during the Trump arc. Like, the Trump arc had a ton of characters.
I mean, historic turnover, just like by numbers in and of themselves. Like, there's such a high volume of Trump people because everyone kept resigning or getting fired. So, but she had actually a lot of longevity, even though her personal turmoil was quite public because her husband was really, really aggressively anti-Trump, and she still stuck with him. And so she's kind of like paid her dues, and I think she's angling to clearly like get a bigger role on Fox News. So she filled in for Sean Hannity last night, and she spoke with South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. And actually, I'm sorry. I didn't know I'd rather do the other one first, not the Kristi Noem part. That was my bad. I read the wrong clip. This was the one I wanted to play. This was her.
This is her in the afternoon.
In the afternoon.
Outnumbered before her Hannity.
Exactly. So she is. Oh, did we lose Binder again? There's something up with his connection. But we will. We'll get Binder back. But point being here, Kellyanne Conway is trying to expand her role in the media, and so she guest hosted for Sean Hannity last night. But before that, she was speaking on Outnumbered with on Fox, and she reacted to the Colorado Supreme Court decision to remove Trump from the ballot. Now, we covered this on the show yesterday. I think it's quite unlikely that Trump will be off the ballot. It's in either the primary or the general election, because it's going to go through legal proceedings and there will be a stay. And even if there's a ruling, my guess is that the Supreme Court might side with him, honestly. So it still, though, is interesting from a constitutional perspective of the 14th Amendment and Section 3. It's written in a way where, like, it does say that, you know, if you participated in an insurrection of some kind. Again, this was designed to target those who fought for the Confederacy and supported the Confederacy in the Civil War, that you can be barred from public office. But it doesn't explicitly list the president. Just an example of how, our Constitution, our laws, they can have oversights. But putting that aside for a second, Kellyanne Conway wants to make a big deal out of this, even though I don't think it's going to really amount to much. And this is her suggestion for how Republicans should proceed in the wake of this decision.
Going to have to stand by whatever the United States Supreme Court decides. He just said, let the court decide. He can't just cherry pick. I meant the Colorado Supreme Court last night in a 4-3 ruling. He's going to have to, I think, eat and own and swallow perhaps a 9-0 unanimous decision by the Supreme Court. I don't think that's going to go according to party lines. They're not going to want to set that precedent. By the way, can we all take a moment to pray for these justices? They're going to be under attack again.
Yeah.
I mean, I truly worry for their safety. These crazy people out there, these lunatical Biden voters, if there are any left, they find their way to the Supreme Court justices' homes, their kids' schools, their places of work, their places of worship. He should be talking about that. He should say there's no question, zero doubt, that the Supreme Court justices have a right to live peaceably and to remain secure. But when he says there's no question he was an insurrectionist, and Adam Schiff, the failing upward to run for the Senate now in California, said, being held to account for inciting insurrection, finally. That's just not the evidence that's been presented in any court of law and that has led to charges for President Trump on those grounds, or that he's been convicted. So it is in doubt. And when you look at what, I just think the Democrats wake up every morning, Emily, and they look at the calendar. The iPhone says January 6, 2021. The date never changes. And then they get an electric vehicle and go get an abortion. I just described the Democratic Party in 17. That's it. That's what I see. But it's always January 6th. And I wanted to put something out from the polling. Threats to democracy in the Emerson poll was number 2. It was actually ahead of healthcare and immigration after the economy and inflation. And the Democrats think they own the issue, threats to democracy. They don't own it. A lot of people are tired of being censored and shadow banned and put upon by the government and its ridiculous regulations and legislation and calling things like Inflation Reduction Act, which did no such thing. I think threats to democracy is going to increase as a focal point for Republican and center-right independent voters.
Okay,
Paris, so much there.
Oh yeah, she did say so much.
If you were
there.
like me, or
So it's interesting why she roped in the Inflation Reduction Act into the list that she was trying to list off about what the Democrats are doing to threaten democracy, because there's nothing she can really say that's going to make sense. Does she want to say, they're not allowing for primary challenges to Biden? I think that is not in any way equivalent to what we're talking about. But she can't even come up with an example. She's like, the shadow banning, the shadow banning on Twitter or whatever. And the regular people don't associate that with a threat to democracy. They think about the damn coup attempt orchestrated by Trump and his supporters. And yes, we do think about it on our way to get an abortion. I have one scheduled this afternoon.
I have one scheduled too.
Nice.
That's what she said. That's what Democrats think and plan. Every day is January 6th. Then we get in our electric vehicle and go and have an abortion.
Yeah. I mean, I got to get my hair dyed blue first.
That was my joke. Oh,
dang it. Sorry.
You got me.
Well,
No,
Brandon, aren't you getting your septum pierced sometime soon? And
I'm getting it double pierced. I'm getting my septum pierced. I'm getting a tattoo of the Antifa flag on my back so I can flash it to people that identify each other. I will just say to, your point, that's because, they can't talk about Stop the Steal anymore on Fox News. Yeah. They can't gesture towards those things like they want to. So that was what their plan. I mean, that was a big part of their strategy post, January 6th, was to continue to lay out those, threads of okay, but what about Dominion? And what about all of these things in Georgia? But now that they've been indicted, they have to, stick to more, I guess, ephemeral claims of the Democrats are doing the same thing or worse to the Republican Party, because they can't make those very loaded, direct claims of fraudulent activity, because, they've caught charges for it now. I would say that's very unprincipled. Who cares about a lawsuit or two if you think you're really defending democracy?
Right. Do you think Fox News guests actually, speaking about, every day is January 6th, do you think Fox News guests, every single time they come on, they get a reminder, do not say the election was stolen, do not bring up Dominion, do not, otherwise you're never coming back on this network again?
Well, no, I think they do. I think they've been told that you can say things like Hillary Clinton questioned the election too. And, look at all of that, all that equivocating. I don't think you're allowed to hint that the election was stolen on Fox News.
Totally. I mean, and we played, we played a few clips. One was a Newsmax clip where the guest, was it Lindell or somebody of that effect, started, and it wasn't Lindell, it was somebody who started to talk about Giuliani started to talk about the election being stolen. They were like, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, because they're worried. I agree with you that they're probably told that. But this is their effort to pivot, as you say. This was Kellyanne Conway later on in the evening, trying again to reclaim the democracy kind of branding for the Republican Party, and ask Kristi Noem this question about the presidential race and what they should do in retaliation.
Wait, it was on Fox News again with Kellyanne Conway?
Yeah, no, she co-hosted or she guest hosted Hannity, filled in for him at night. She's gonna get some gig.
Right. It's the holiday season. All the regulars are gone. They need to look through that contact list and pull out anyone they can.
And if he does win again, I'm sure he'll return to Mount Rushmore to be with you and everyone else in South Dakota for July 4th celebration. So, Governor Noem, would you be able to bar Biden from the ballot in your state of South Dakota if, say, he violated that part of the 14th Amendment by unfreezing assets for Iran or allowed terrorists to just openly walk over the southern border? I mean, do you think that you'd have that power, or your highest court would have that power?
I don't believe so. That's what is so interesting. It's, the process that the court has is a balance to our federal government. It is a balance to our executive branch, a balance to our legislative branch. So us exerting the kind of influence on the court and their decisions to take that kind of action is really unprecedented. So I trust our South Dakota state laws, our Constitution. It gives great guidance to us, and our court system understands that their job is to follow statute and give decisions based on the scales of justice.
So everything is a 14th Amendment violation now, I guess. The policy of unfreeze. I mean, I'm almost in awe that Kellyanne Conway said something that was closer to the reality about the Iranian assets, because mostly Republicans say that Joe Biden gave Iran like billions of dollars, basically, of taxpayer money, when in reality, the Iranian assets that were unfrozen as a part of diplomacy were money that was already theirs. It's just being frozen in a bank, and as a part of like attempting, hopefully, to get us back to the Iran nuclear deal, which honestly, because of what Israel's doing, becomes very unlikely at this point. The Biden administration had unfrozen those assets, and then I guess border policy is a 14th Amendment violation. What does anything mean anymore? Because I guess that's an insurrection now.
Right. No, I mean, she's really pulling out whatever she can. Like the idea that you even ask Kristi Noem this, and just it's just like what's going like. Listen, you can certainly disagree with the Colorado Supreme Court's decision and argue on that merit, but to then like try to pull the tit for tat, like, well, if they did it, can you do it in your state to Joe Biden, even though the situation's completely different and not at all analogous whatsoever? It's like, really,
they're doing that with impeachment. They're doing that with impeachment. Like that is the Republican Party philosophy on how to wield power, because Trump got impeached twice, one for trying to leverage U.S. aid for political gain to investigate Biden into Ukraine, two for trying to overturn the democratic results of an election. Now it's time to look at the $1,300 car payments that Hunter gave and claim that it's somehow from China.
Yeah, I mean, or Burisma, that's what they're really, there's always a Burisma thrown in there for good measure. But, I think generally for the Republican strategy, it's just been so hammered in that they have to have this tit for tat, because usually the people that they're arguing with are just like, entrenched centrist media reporters who are going to try to find that like neutrality even when none exists, or they're just making disingenuous arguments online that they know are going to be amplified by an entire population of like disingenuous supporters. And as far as I understand, like the people who brought the litigation in Colorado was like a nonpartisan group. They were just like a group of people who were concerned that his actions violated the 14th Amendment, which I mean, I support what they did in Colorado. I think it's really hard to see what happened, not just in terms of what happened on January 6th, but also the other things regarding like the fake electors and all the conversation he was having, and not be led to the conclusion that he was, operating in a way that is not befitting the office of president, and to even be like, hey, there is a better than zero chance that if he gets into the office, he might not get out again, which Republicans will say is fear mongering from Democrats. Some liberals will also pretend like that's fear mongering because it makes it easier to sleep at night, considering that, the actual threat of the Republicans is way larger than they imagine. But I think it's the law operating as it should operate, which is what frightens them, because they're not able to tip the scale in a way that just increases their ability to pretend that they're legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, democracy and protecting it it also requires barring people, I would say, or preventing people who want to overturn democracy from getting into the halls of power. Like in Bolivia, Janine Áñez tried to orchestrate a coup, and now she's in prison. She's sentenced to 10 years. And that is how other countries choose to deal with this kind of thing. And they're pretending that dealing with an anti-democracy basically candidate and wrecker is the same as anti-democracy in and of itself, and that's a fairly right-wing construction for sure.
I did everything right, and they indicted me.
They indicted me.
Well, I mean, Juan Guaido is still allowed to just like roam the lands in Venezuela.
We just talked
I mean,
about this with our guest. He's teaching some course in Florida right now.
Oh man, okay, yeah, he's like working at a community college in Florida. Like,
Yeah.
Why can't Trump just be doing that?
Is Bolsonaro teaching there too?
No, he left. He probably couldn't afford American health care the way he likes to be in the hospital.